The follow-up to the incredible 2018 God of War is coming. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, the 10 biggest changes for God of War Ragnarok. Starting off at number 10, you'll be able to explore all 9 realms this time. One of the coolest things about God of War 2018 was that you could explore many of the 9 realms of Norse mythology. Now, out of those 9, you could never visit 3 of them. Svartalfheim, the realm of the dwarves, Vanaheim, the land of the Vanir, and Asgard, the land of the Aesir. Now, those are some pretty important places in the story, so the fact those places and every other realm you've previously visited will appear in God of War Ragnarok is pretty good stuff. According to the game's director, going to all the 9 realms, this is big for me to make the old world new again. Any realm you've been to before, because Fimbulwinter has struck, has now changed in some way. It doesn't mean every realm is affected by snow, by the way. I think that's a misnomer. Fimbulwinter is an event that changes the realms in different ways. Midgard is the cataclysmic epicenter, so it got permafrost almost, if you will. So it sounds like even places we've been to before will be changed in some way, so it should be interesting to go back to places like Muspelheim and Niflheim, where there wasn't really a lot to do in the original game. They're kind of bonus areas, but having some of the less developed locations more fleshed out in Ragnarok is gonna be good stuff. Of course, the place everyone is most interested in is going to be Asgard, the home of Thor, Odin, and the rest of the gods. Considering Sony Santa Monica's somewhat offbeat version of Norse mythology, it'll be interesting to see how they choose to interpret it. The trailer did reveal at least one new realm as well. The city-looking environment where you meet the new dwarf character must be the realm of the dwarves, and it looks wildly different from the other environments we've seen in the game, so all this realm hopping should provide some refreshing variety to the game. At number 9, combat will be more vertical this time around. One of the more notable things in the recent revealed trailer is that Kratos can now grapple up ledges, which is a pretty big change from the primarily flat battles of the first game. There was a little bit of ledge climbing and vertical movement in the original, but this one added move seems to suggest that quickly moving around the battlefield with multiple elevations will be much more of a factor to combat. The director basically says so in an interview to IGN. Kratos grappling up the ledge with a chain and then colliding with the enemy and going off in the new gameplay footage. You couldn't do things like that in the 2018 game. Most of the gameplay last time took place on a plane. Now there's some verticality to it, but it wasn't a thought like, oh, let's have him fleeing up walls just because. That's included because there's gameplay oriented around it. Almost King of the Hill type encounters, so it changes how a player expresses themselves on the battlefield. So it sounds like the verticality is a major focus this time around and should add some variety to what's going on in a lot of the combat. The mention of the King of the Hill type encounters is particularly interesting. Like, do they mean there will be literally fights where you have to hold a position, or do they mean getting the high ground makes a fight easier in some way? I don't want to speculate too much, but that is a very interesting thing that he said. Another thing the developer mentioned, enemies also can take advantage of that, so if you're not paying attention, they're going to take advantage as well. So it really sounds like they're implying positioning in battle is going to be important. How exactly that's going to work, we don't know, but we do like the sound of it. In God of War 2018, combat could get a little stale after a while. Not that it wasn't phenomenal, it was, but it's just nice to have something to mix it up and give a little bit of a change. At number 8, Atreus will play a more pivotal role in the story and in combat. Again, in an interview with IGN, the director of Ragnarok basically said Atreus would play a bigger role in combat. In so many words, he said he's grown up a little bit, so he's got more follow-ups and setups for Kratos. So he's basically fulfilling the same role as in the original game, but it sounds like he'll have more to do here. They mentioned that certain enemies have new traits or abilities that make it so you want to go at them with Atreus first, or attack in tandem in some way. There will definitely be some new attacks, like that part in the trailer where Atreus summons a, critter, I guess, and rides it around. Of course, they also tease that Atreus will play a bigger role in the story as well. The heart of these things is the relationship between the father and son, so that's going to remain a big focus there as well. But with Atreus being older and more strong-willed, it's safe to assume that the two of them are going to butt heads a lot more. And in that extended interview with IGN, they discussed this in a little more detail. Nothing specific is said, but they describe the general direction of the story, so it's safe to assume that Atreus will play a big part in that. Of course, with it being revealed that his true name is Loki, anyone who's familiar with Norse mythology or even just the MCU knows that he has a more important role to play in Ragnarok. And at number 7, a lot of enemies that didn't make it into the first game are going to appear in this one. One of the bigger complaints about God of War 2018 was the lack of enemy variety. Finding the same old Draugr got old after a while, so it looks like this is a key area they want to address this time, if the trailers are anything to go by anyway. According to the PlayStation blog, this big lizard creature is called a Driki, or Drikai, and it already looks really different compared to the mostly humanoid enemies in the first game. There's also this centaur-looking enemy called a Stalker by the PlayStation blog that looks pretty unique. Of course, there are a lot of returning enemies as well, like the insect-like dark elves, but they clearly wanted to show off some of the new stuff. In a different interview, the director said that enemies cut from the original game would appear in this one, and as far as I can tell, there's only 2 known enemies that were cut from God of War 2018. The Norse warriors, who were basically the standard enemies, and the drummer, this gross 4-armed creature that was replaced by the Revenant. The Norse warriors are definitely returning, at least. The trailer shows Kratos fighting a lot more normal human-looking opponents, and that's basically what these guys were before being replaced by the Draugr. It seems like in general we'll see more unique-looking regular enemies in this game, but that's just from watching the trailer. The takeaway here is that there should be more variety to the enemies, and for an action game, that's obviously a good thing. At number 6, Kratos has more quote-unquote expressiveness. I was a little bit confusing. We got an out-of-context quote from the big IGN interview saying, "So in Ragnarok, we're basically trying to do specifically with Kratos, we're trying to give out a more expressiveness to the player." Now that sounds like nothing, but what they're saying is they want to give the player more options for how to build Kratos in this game. So basically, there seems like there's going to be a lot more customization options. Apparently ways to change your playstyle, different armor to collect, etc. The article clarifies he's talking about more choices around Kratos gear, which was one of the big ways you could change how Kratos could play. Each armor set has its own strengths and weaknesses, so depending on what you wore, it would affect your playstyle. It sounds like they want to expand on that idea for this game, but in what way exactly is still pretty unclear. One way it seems like they're planning to do this is something we noticed in the trailer. Like, have a look at the shields Kratos can equip. In the first game, you're kind of stuck with basically one shield. In the trailer for Ragnarok, just the trailer, you can see different shield styles. Like, there's one that's almost box-shaped and one that's sort of elongated. What they do that is different, we don't really know, but they look completely different at least. And if they are building on the foundation of the first game where different gear changes the playstyle, this in theory could be a peek into that, and that'd be really interesting. At number 5, this game has a new director. Depending on who you ask, it's either barely noteworthy or it's a huge deal. Cory Barlog basically became a superstar video game director overnight with God of War 2018. For whatever reason, he's a name that people remember, and he gets the lion's share of praise for the success of that game. For some people, it was kind of shocking to find out he wouldn't be directing this game. Eric Williams is who is in charge here. From the interview, it sounds like he's got an extensive history with the God of War franchise. And Cory Barlog credits Eric for pushing many of the radical changes we saw in God of War 2018. Basically, they're not giving the series some random guy off the street. Sounds like there's a lot of trust going on here, so it doesn't seem like there's a lot to be worried about to me. But whenever a superstar director leaves a project, it's always cause for concern. I don't know that I would say it seems like there is a lot to worry about here, though. At number 4, Midgard is now covered in ice. Like we said in the other point, Fimbulwinter is here, and that means the main area from the first game, the Lake of the Nine, is now covered in ice and snow. To travel, instead of using a boat like in the first game, you'll use some snow dogs, possibly wolves, called Specky and Svanna to get around. It's not clear exactly how much time you actually spend in Midgard in this game, as a lot of focus is put on the other realms, but it probably functions like it did in the first game as sort of a hub area that you return to while traveling between realms. The new snowy version of the map makes places that are familiar look very different, but how this affects things exactly isn't something we don't know completely yet. It could change the gameplay significantly, or it could just be cosmetic. We don't know. It really depends. Like, how much time is even spent here, for instance? Or if it's like what a lot of people on Reddit are speculating, that the trailer is only showing stuff from very early. Apparently, all the realms will experience some kind of changes because of the Fimbulwinter, but we have no idea if any are going to be as dramatic as in Midgard. Either way, it should make going back to places we've already seen a little more interesting. And number 3, even though he is not shown in the trailer, Odin will play a role in the story. I mean, yeah, we all know about Thor and his big gut, but probably the most significant figure in the whole thing didn't get shown at all in the trailer, and we're talking about Odin, the king of the gods in Norse mythology. He gets talked about constantly in the first game, mostly by Mimir, who goes off about how cruel and nasty he is, but we never actually see him. You'd think that the mystery surrounding the character would mean they're more tight-lipped about his appearance in the game, but actually they've said a few things about him. For one, we know who's acting. He's voiced by Richard Schiff, who's probably best known for his role in The West Wing, but he has also been in a ton of other things as well. On top of that, Williams actually dropped some almost spoilery information about Odin's role in the story. According to him, rather than being the king of the gods sitting in some massive castle, Odin is kind of just an old man doing his own stuff. They're kind of saying that Odin will be a lot different than Zeus, and that he's going to surprise people in a way that Thor's appearance probably also surprised people. Of course, if you know anything about Norse mythology, the way they describe Odin makes a little more sense. He's often depicted as a kind of lone wander character who does his own thing, and that seems to be what's going on here. What's interesting is the way that this is different from the way Mimir describes Odin, who basically just calls him a tyrant and a dictator. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all comes together in the final game. And number 2, this is the last game in the Norse Saga, which isn't really news at this point. Pretty much everyone and their mother have reported that Ragnarok will be the last game in the Norse Saga, but it is important to mention, because specifically, most people assumed it would be a trilogy like with the original God of War games, but instead they're cutting it short here. The reasoning, Cory Barlog, who directed the original game like we said earlier and is still very much employed at the studio, the reasoning he gave makes a lot of sense. In an interview with Captain Kuba, he basically said it took 5 years to make the first game, probably take about 5 years to make the second game, and if they did a third, it'd take like 15 years to tell a single story, which is too long. Which, yeah, we get it. Hopefully we'll be able to wrap the story up in a satisfying way here, because the first game definitely felt like the first game in a trilogy. The actual story of the Norse gods didn't really move forward that much. But it's also nice to know we don't have to wait a super long period of time for the story to wrap up. We're gonna know how it ends soon. And at number 1, it's next-gen, but it's not next-gen exclusive. Sony's messaging about cross-generations and next-gen has been confusing to say the least, but they have confirmed God of War Ragnarok is cross-gen. It's probably kind of disappointing for people who want a true next-gen experience with this game, but for all the people who can't get a PS5, it's good to know that they're still able to experience the game when it comes out sometime next year. Now, we did find out that there is a lot of change with the way they're doing the digital upgrades between the PS4 and PS5 version. After the controversy of the Horizon one, Sony's developed a specific plan. Jim Ryan, president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, had this to say: "We want to confirm today that moving forward, PlayStation first-party exclusive cross-gen titles, newly releasing on PS4 and 5, both digital and physical, will offer a $10 digital upgrade option from PS4 to PS5. This will apply to the next God of War and Gran Turismo 7, as well as any other cross-gen PS4 and PS5 titles published by Sony Interactive Entertainment." So no free upgrade, but $10 isn't the worst. Still, it's $10 that, of course, you could also not spend. So it's not ideal, but it's not the worst. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.